Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Behind the Vinyl. If you're new here to Beyond the Vibe, we do lots of different things here. We mainly do lots of interviews with amazing guests. They have incredible stories. And then sometimes we'll do things like top 10s, like we did top 10 best debut albums, stuff like that. And then, of course, sometimes we'll be doing things like this, where we take a look in depth behind an album with kind of historical impact or something that's really resonated with people over the years. And of course, with this being a Halloween special as well as the first episode, I thought what better first one to do with it being Halloween than Black Sabbath's debut album, of course, the self-titled Black Sabbath, with the creepy-ass cover there. Let's take a look into that. Birmingham, England, 1968. A city known for its industrial might and relentless work ethic. The city was a tough place. Industry boomed, factories lined the streets, belching smoke and noise. The air was thick with a scent of metal and sweat. Amidst this gritty backdrop, a new sound was brewing. It was raw, it was heavy, and it was unlike anything the world had heard before. This revolutionary sound was Black Sabbath, a band that would go on to define a genre and influence countless musicians. The band's members were no strangers to hard times. Tony Iommi, the guitarist, had lost the tips of his fingers in a factory accident, a devastating blow for any musician.
And I got my hand in, it just went straight down. And of course, as I pulled my hand back, I took the two ends off. So after that happened, of course, that blew everything. I was just devastated.
But Iommi was determined. He crafted artificial fingertips, creating a sound that was uniquely his own. This gave him a unique sound, dark and heavy. Geezer Butler, the bassist, brought a deep, resonant tone that perfectly complemented Tony's guitar. Bill Ward on drums, providing the powerful, driving rhythms that would become a hallmark of their music. And of course, there was Ozzy Osbourne, the ever-eccentric, unpredictable frontman, whose voice and stage presence captivated audiences. These four musicians came together with a shared love of music, but they wanted to push the boundaries of what music could be. They added something different. Their sound was heavier, darker, and more intense than anything that had come before. This was influenced by their environment and their own personal struggles. The harsh reality of life in Birmingham seeped into their music, giving it an edge that resonated with listeners. They practiced and honed their craft in small, cramped venues and places. Some early audiences didn't even understand what they were going for. Famously, some ladies running out frightened at the music they were putting out. The conditions were far from glamorous, but it was here that they had found their voice. The sound was raw, powerful, and filled with an energy that was impossible to ignore. It was the sound of a band on the brink of something extraordinary. Black Sabbath were not just a band, they were the pioneers of a new era in rock music, an era that would leave an indelible mark on the history of music. Black Sabbath signed with Vertigo Records, a pivotal moment for them, but little did they know this was the beginning of something monumental. They had the chance to, of course, record their first album, an opportunity that they seized with both hands. The excitement would have been palpable as they prepared to lay down the tracks that would unknowingly define a genre. The recording process was quick and dirty, reflecting the raw energy and urgency of the band. They didn't have the luxury of time, but they had passion and drive. They recorded it in just 2 days, a feat almost unheard of in the industry today. This rapid pace was a testament to their cohesion and determination. There was no fancy production. What you hear is what they played. A direct and unfiltered connection to their music. This minimalist approach was both a necessity and a choice, emphasizing authenticity over perfection. The result was a raw, unpolished sound This became their trademark, a sound that would go on and resonate with their fans and set them apart from other bands of that era. The album, titled Black Sabbath, was released on Friday, February 13th, 1970. It was a statement, a bold declaration of their arrival on the music scene. This was not love songs and flower power. This was something different. This was heavy metal, a new genre that would influence countless bands and shape the future of rock music. The album hit the music scene like a bomb. It was a systemic shift that no one saw coming. No one had heard anything like this before. The raw power and dark themes were a stark contrast to the flower power and peace anthems of the 60s. The opening track, also called Black Sabbath, was unlike anything that came before. It was a haunting, almost cinematic experience that drew listeners into a world of darkness and mystery. It featured a tritone known as the Devil's Interval. This particular combination of notes was considered so unsettling that it was actually banned in medieval church music. This created an ominous, unsettling sound. It was a sound that evoked a sense of dread and foreboding, perfectly capturing the essence of the band's message.
It's like a black, malevolent thing. It's a horrible feeling off it. And I just totally freaked out. And I told Ozzy about it. And he came up with the lyrics to Black Sabbath.
The album was a mix of heavy riffs, dark lyrics, and Ozzy's haunting vocals. Each song was a journey into the unknown, a departure from the safe and familiar. Black Sabbath didn't shy away from the darkness. They confronted it head on. Their music was a cathartic release for many. And of course, you know, after they recorded the album, Iommi would go on and say that the next day they went out to Switzerland and played for just £20. The album hasn't always been really well received. Believe it or not, I have a review here from Rolling Stone, where Rolling Stone's Lester Bangs, and I quote, describes the album as just like Cream, but worse. He dismissed the album as a shuck, despite the murky song titles and some inane lyrics that sound like Vanilla Fudge playing doggerel tribute to Aleister Crowley. The album has nothing to do with spiritualism, the occult, or anything much except from stiff rectitions of Cream cliches. It's a bit savage. You know, my thoughts on the Black Sabbath album is, you know, of course it's a historic album. You know, it's raw, it's unapologetically dark, you know, it's pioneering. As to whether it is the first metal album ever, as to whether they invented metal, I would certainly say that they invented metal, in my view. I think, did they do it with just this album alone? I'm not sure if they did it with just one album. I believe that they did do it, though. I think that they've, with the follow-up in Paranoid, I think that pushed it over the edge. I think with stuff like, obviously, Paranoid and War Pigs, you know, it went further down that heavier line, and I think kind of completed that circle there. But I think they very nearly did it with this album. Very close indeed. It certainly gave birth to that genre. But it, you know, regardless of all these labels that people love to put on things, I think that it's you know, it's a historic record, regardless of, you know, genre or whatever box people want to put it in. It's had such a lasting impact, and, you know, what a legacy. You know, you hear kids these days that still will go out and discover this album, or they'll go and get it on vinyl, or, you know, something like that. It's a must-own album, right? But I want to hear from you. Comment in the comments below. Do you think this is the first metal album ever? If not, I really do want to hear from you. Is there a band out there that, maybe I've never heard of, maybe lots of people have never heard of, that did it before? Sometimes you get that kind of undiscovered band, that one that kind of slips through the net. Is there another one out there that predates Sabbath? If so, please do let us know. And of course, if you like what you see here on Beyond the Vibe, of course, check out a couple of these other videos that we've got coming along here. Both, really interesting guests that have been on the show in the past. If that's not your jam, that's cool. Hopefully I'll see you next time with something a bit more like this, when we cover an album in a bit more depth. Hopefully I'll see you next time.